My name is Olivia Bennett, and I'm writing this down because even now, I'm still not sure I ever truly got away from it. This happened last winter when my husband Aaron and I moved into a small house in suburban Indiana. It was an old house, not some isolated cabin in the woods, just a completely normal home. 2 stories, small front yard, neighbors on both sides, 1-car garage, a weathered white fence in the backyard. It was so normal that during the walkthrough, I remember telling Aaron the place actually made me feel safe. I was 29 at the time. Aaron worked night shifts at a hospital. We had an 8-month-old baby boy named Noah. Because Aaron usually worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., most nights it was just me and Noah in the house. I wasn't afraid of being alone, at least not before this started. When Noah began sleeping in his own room, we bought a baby monitor with a camera. Night vision, motion alerts, phone app, 2-way audio, the kind where parents can talk to the baby from another room. At first, I loved it. I could sit downstairs in the living room, drink tea, watch TV quietly, and check my phone every now and then to see Noah sleeping. Everything was perfectly normal for the first 2 weeks. Then one night, I started hearing static, a soft crackling noise, like a weak radio signal. I figured the Wi-Fi was acting up. That house had terrible reception in certain spots, especially Noah's room at the end of the upstairs hallway. I reset the router, moved the camera, but over the next few nights, the static kept coming back, only after midnight, usually between 1 and 3 a.m. Not constant, not loud enough to scare me, just enough to make me uneasy. On the 4th night, Aaron was at work. I'd fallen half asleep on the couch downstairs when the baby monitor app alerted me to sound coming from Noah's room. I opened the app. The familiar gray-green night vision screen appeared. Noah was asleep in his crib, facing the wall peacefully, but I could still hear the static, and buried underneath it was a woman's voice, very soft. Shoo! I sat upright immediately. I thought I'd imagined it. I held the phone closer to my ear. Again, should go back to sleep. I froze for a few seconds, my mind almost completely blank. The voice didn't sound like it was coming through the phone speaker. It sounded like someone was physically standing inside Noah's room, whispering right beside the camera. I ran upstairs. I still remember how loud and clumsy my footsteps sounded against the stairs. I threw open Noah's bedroom door. Nobody there. The room was dark except for the small moon-shaped night light glowing beside the dresser. Noah was still asleep. The window was locked. The closet was empty. Nothing under the crib. I stood in the middle of the room for a long time, trying to convince myself I'd heard wrong. Maybe the app had been hacked. I'd read stories about strangers accessing baby monitors and talking to children through them. Honestly, that idea scared me even more. The next morning, I told Aaron. He didn't laugh, but I could tell he didn't fully believe me. He changed every Wi-Fi password, reset the camera, switched app accounts, and enabled 2-factor authentication. That night, everything was normal. The next night, too, I started thinking maybe I'd just gotten paranoid. Until 3 days later, Aaron had the night off. We both went to bed early because Noah had been teething and crying all day. At exactly 1:46 a.m., the monitor blasted with loud crying. Aaron grabbed the phone before I could. He stared at the screen for several seconds and suddenly went silent. "What's wrong with him?" I asked. Aaron didn't answer. He just handed me the phone. On the screen, Noah was asleep. Not crying, not moving, but through the monitor speaker, we could still hear a baby crying. Distorted, dragged out, like a recording being played in slow motion. I felt my stomach turn cold. Aaron jumped out of bed and ran toward Noah's room. I followed, right behind him. When we opened the door, the room was completely silent. Noah was still lying in the crib, but the rocking chair beside the window was moving on its own, slowly rocking back and forth. Creak, creak, creak. Aaron walked over and grabbed the chair. It stopped immediately. There was no wind. The windows were shut. Aaron unplugged the camera that same night. He didn't say much afterward. He just carried Noah into our bedroom and locked the door. I knew Aaron was scared. He wasn't the kind of person who panicked easily. After years of working night shifts as a nurse, he'd seen everything. Accidents, emergencies, drunk patients, screaming people. But that night, lying beside me in bed, he kept staring at the bedroom door. Wide awake, barely blinking. The next morning, he returned the baby monitor to the store. Then he bought a new one, different brand, more expensive. This one had its own private security system and didn't use Wi-Fi at all. The camera connected directly to a handheld monitor. Aaron said, "If it happens again, then it's not hacking." I hated hearing that, because it meant the easy explanation was gone. The first 2 nights with the new monitor were completely normal. I practically forced myself to believe the old camera had just malfunctioned. Then on the 3rd night, I woke up to a faint clicking sound. Not from the monitor, from the hallway. Aaron was working the night shift again. I stayed still in bed, listening. Click, click, like fingernails lightly tapping against wood. I picked up the monitor. Noah was still asleep. The camera sat in the corner of his room, showing the crib and part of the doorway. But Noah's bedroom door was cracked open. I knew I had closed it. Not locked, but closed. I sat upright immediately, and that's when the monitor whispered. This time, clearer. "Don't go in there." I froze. A woman's voice. The same voice. Soft, raspy, so close it sounded pressed against the microphone. And somehow, I knew she wasn't warning me. It sounded more like an order. I went anyway. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped into the hallway. The house was pitch black. Only the street lights outside cast long, pale streaks across the floor. Noah's door was open just a few inches. I could hear the rocking chair moving. Creak, creak. I pushed the door open. The chair was rocking. Noah was still asleep. But this time, something was different. His blanket had been pulled neatly up to his chest. I never tucked Noah in like that. The doctor had specifically warned us not to leave loose blankets around infants. I yanked the blanket away immediately. My hand was shaking so badly, I almost woke him up. Then the monitor in my hand burst into static. I looked down at the screen. The camera was still showing Noah's room. I was standing beside the crib. I could see myself on the monitor. But behind me, beside the rocking chair, a woman was sitting there. Long hair hanging over her face. Both hands resting on her knees. I spun around instantly. The chair was empty. I looked back at the monitor. She was still sitting there, and the chair continued rocking beneath her weight. I screamed. I grabbed Noah and ran out of the room. I locked myself inside our bedroom and called Aaron. He got home in less than 20 minutes. We called the police. They searched the entire house. No signs of forced entry. No open windows. No footprints. Nobody hiding anywhere. One older officer asked if he could see the recording. I checked the monitor again. There was nothing saved. The system only recorded major motion events, and apparently nothing had triggered that night. No woman. No rocking chair moving. No voices. Just me standing beside Noah's crib before suddenly panicking and running out with him. The police officer gave me a look I'll never forget. The look of someone thinking, "She's exhausted. She's losing it." After they left, Aaron installed security cameras throughout the hallway and living room. But not in Noah's room. We moved Noah's crib into our bedroom. I thought that would end it. But the following night, while Aaron was in the shower, I heard the old baby monitor crackling from inside the trash bin in the garage. The same monitor Aaron swore he'd returned to the store. It was playing the sound of Noah crying. I stood frozen at the garage doorway, gripping my phone so tightly my hand hurt. The crying stopped. Then the woman's voice came from the darkness. "You shouldn't have taken him out of that room." I didn't go into the garage. I slammed the door shut and called for Aaron. He came running downstairs, hair still wet, carrying a large flashlight. When he opened the garage door, the sound was gone. Aaron turned on the light. There was no monitor in the trash. Nothing except a few garbage bags, cardboard boxes, and an old stroller against the wall. That's when I started crying. Not panicking, just exhausted, because I knew Aaron was trying to believe me. But every piece of evidence disappeared before he could see it himself. Neither of us slept that night. Around 4 a.m., Aaron started searching the history of the house online. The house itself had only been built 11 years earlier. No murders, No deaths inside the home. No haunting stories. But before the neighborhood was developed, the land had once been occupied by a small private daycare. It was called Willow Creek Daycare. The place shut down after a scandal. Not murder, not kidnapping, just a disappearance. A teacher named Margaret Ellis vanished at the end of her shift one evening. Nobody ever found out where she went. An old article said she was last seen cleaning the infant room. In the photo, Margaret was a woman in her 40s with long dark brown hair. I stared at the picture on Aaron's laptop and felt my throat tighten. I couldn't be sure, but the hair, the way she sat, looked exactly like the woman I'd seen on the monitor. Aaron wanted us to stay at his mother's house for a few days. I agreed immediately. We started packing before sunrise. Noah was asleep in his baby seat in the middle of the living room. I was in the kitchen grabbing bottles when I heard Aaron call my name. Olivia. Something about his voice sounded wrong. I walked back into the living room. Aaron was standing in front of the hallway security camera monitor, the one we'd installed the night before. On the screen was footage from 3:12 a.m. The living room was dark. Noah was asleep in his seat. Aaron and I were both sitting on a couch nearby, exhausted, half asleep. Then, from the upstairs hallway, a woman walked slowly down the stairs. Long hair, dark nightgown, moving very slowly. She crossed the living room and stopped beside Noah's seat. Then she leaned down and stayed there for almost 4 full minutes. I don't remember any of it. Aaron didn't either. In the footage, the two of us sat less than 10 feet away and never reacted once. Like we couldn't even see her. Then the woman slowly lifted her head and looked directly into the camera. For the first time, I saw her face clearly. Not distorted, not bloody, not like something from a horror movie. Just the face of an ordinary woman. But her eyes made my entire body go cold. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at us through the camera. Then she raised one finger to her lips, telling us to be quiet. After that, she turned around, walked back upstairs, and disappeared into Noah's room. We left the house within 10 minutes. We didn't come back until full daylight, and only with Aaron's parents beside us. Noah's room was empty, but the rocking chair had been pulled into the center of the room. And underneath it, on the floor, was a small object, an old yellowed plastic name tag. It read, Margaret Ellis, Infant Care. We sold the house after that. We never told the buyers anything. I know that sounds awful, but I just wanted to get away from that place. Now we live in an apartment almost 2 hours away. Noah is older now. Aaron doesn't work night shifts anymore. And I still refuse to use baby monitors. No cameras. No two-way speakers. No devices of any kind in my son's room. But 2 months ago, something happened. I was putting Noah to bed when he suddenly smiled over my shoulder. I asked him, "What are you looking at?" He pointed toward the corner of the room. Then he said something I had never taught him. "She says Mommy has to let me sleep alone." I turned around. The corner was empty, but the reading chair beside the window was rocking very gently. Creak, creak. Story number 2. The woman who kept appearing on the store cameras after she died. My name is Marcus Reed. I used to work night security at a 24-hour grocery store in Arizona. I didn't believe in ghosts, at least not before this happened. My job was incredibly simple. Patrol the store, check the cameras, deal with shoplifters, lock the loading area behind the building at midnight. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights were painfully boring. After 1 a.m., there were barely any customers left, usually just truck drivers, drunks, a few homeless people buying cheap coffee. The store sat right off the highway, so every night you could hear cars rushing past outside. That sound used to make me feel safe, until around my 3rd month working there. That night, I took over the shift from an older guard named Calvin. He handed me the keys to the back storage area and asked a strangely specific question. "Have you ever seen the woman standing in aisle 9? I thought he was joking. I even laughed. "A customer." Calvin didn't laugh back. He just glanced at the row of security monitors on the wall and said, "If you see her, don't call out to her." I frowned. Call out to who? But Calvin had already grabbed his jacket and walked out. I forgot about the whole thing maybe an hour later. Around 1:40 a.m., the store was nearly empty. The only cashier working that night was a 20-year-old girl named Jenna. She was sitting behind the register watching TikToks on her phone. I did my usual patrol, then went back to the camera room behind the manager's office. There were 16 cameras total. Normally, I just skim through the screens to kill time. But camera 11 caught my attention. It covered aisle 9, the canned goods and frozen food section. There was a woman standing at the far end of the aisle. Gray coat, long black hair, facing away from the camera. I felt mildly annoyed because it was almost 2 a.m. and some customer was standing alone in a blind spot like that. I watched the screen for a few seconds. She didn't move, not even slightly. I picked up my radio and called Jenna. Still got a customer in aisle 9. Jenna answered almost immediately. No, I already checked all the aisles. I looked back at the monitor. The woman was still there. I said, "There's someone in a gray coat standing at the end of aisle 9. Silence for a few seconds. Then Jenna asked, "Are you messing with me?" "No, Marcus. I'm literally standing in aisle 9 right now." The back of my neck went cold. I stared at the monitor. Jenna walked into frame at the front of aisle 9. She looked around. Nobody else was there. But on the monitor, the woman was still standing at the far end of the aisle, directly behind Jenna. I shot up from my chair. "Jenna, turn around." "What? There's nobody." "Turn around." Jenna flinched and spun around fast. Nothing there. I looked back at the screen. The woman had disappeared. Camera 11 flickered with static for a few seconds before returning to normal. Jenna went back to the register while I kept staring at camera 11 for another 10 minutes. Nothing. I started convincing myself the system had just glitched. Until 2:13 a.m. Camera 11 flickered again. Then the woman appeared a second time. Closer now, standing in the middle of aisle 9. And this time, she was staring directly into the camera. I still couldn't clearly see her face. Her hair covered most of it, but there was one thing I noticed immediately. Her neck was tilted sideways at a disturbing angle. Not a natural angle. Not human. My radio crackled at my hip. Jenna's voice came through. "Marcus?" "Yeah." Her voice sounded quieter than usual. Someone just walked past the registers. I didn't see anybody leave the store. "No, I think they're still inside." Right then, camera 11 went black. Then in the reflection of the dark monitor, something appeared. A woman's face, extremely close to the lens, and her lips were moving, like she was trying to say something. I left the camera room immediately. Jenna was standing behind the checkout counter, pale as a ghost. I asked, "What did you see?" She kept staring toward aisle 9 and answered quietly. "There was someone standing at the end of the aisle watching me. A man or a woman. I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" Jenna swallowed hard. "All I saw was hair." I grabbed my flashlight and headed straight for aisle 9. I didn't want Jenna to see that I was scared. But honestly, my stomach already felt ice cold. The supermarket lights were the usual harsh fluorescent white, but aisle 9 always seemed darker than the others because of the freezer cases running along the right side. I moved slowly past each shelf. Nobody there. I shined a flashlight across the floor. No footprints. No sounds. Just the constant hum of the freezer motors behind me. Then I heard a freezer door open. Creak. Slow. Very slow. I turned sharply to my right. One of the freezer doors was hanging slightly open. I stepped closer. Inside were nothing but frozen pizzas and cartons of ice cream. But just as I reached to close the door, I saw a reflection in the glass. Someone standing behind me. A woman with black hair. Her neck bent sideways. I spun around. Nobody there. Right then, the lights in aisle 9 flickered. Off, on, off, on. And during that final moment of darkness, I saw her standing at the end of the aisle. Much closer this time. Close enough that I could almost see her face. Gray skin, purple lips, eyes stretched unnaturally wide. The lights came back on. She was gone. Then I heard Jenna scream from the front registers. I ran out of the aisle. Jenna had backed herself against the cigarette display. Her hand shook as she pointed toward the glass doors at the front of the store. A woman was standing outside. Gray coat, black hair, head tilted sideways. standing perfectly still beneath the parking lot lights. I ran toward the entrance, but before I even got close, every light in the parking lot suddenly shut off. The entire lot dropped into darkness. Only the glow from inside the store remained. The woman disappeared. I pushed the doors open and stepped outside. Nobody there. No footsteps. No car engines. No slamming doors. Nothing. But in the dust near the entrance, there were wet footprints leading from the parking lot into the store. One after another, like someone had walked in from the rain. Except the ground outside was completely dry. The footprints led directly toward aisle 9. Then stopped. Jenna started crying. She said she wanted to go home. I didn't stop her. After she left, I was alone in the store. That's when everything really started going wrong. At 3:07 a.m., the store intercom suddenly turned on by itself. A burst of static echoed through the supermarket. Then a woman's voice came through, very softly. "Marcus." I froze. I hadn't told Jenna my name that night, and nobody else was still inside the store. The voice continued, "I'm still here." Every camera monitor suddenly exploded into static. The screens flickered violently. Then all of them switched to the exact same feed. Camera 11. Aisle 9. The woman was standing in the middle of the aisle. This time, her hair had fallen away from one side of her face. And I realized half of her face looked crushed in, like she died in a car accident. Dark, dried blood stained the collar of her gray coat. But the worst part was, she was smiling. And behind her, there was a man standing at the far end of the aisle, completely motionless, his face hidden in shadow, just standing there. Then the woman on the monitor slowly raised one finger and pointed directly at me. I swear, at that moment I almost ran out of the store. But something kept me there. Not courage, more like the feeling that if I looked away from the camera screen for even a second, something terrible would happen. The woman was still pointing directly at the camera. Behind her, the man standing in the darkness hadn't moved at all. I zoomed in. The image broke apart into static and grain, but I started to make out more details. The man was wearing an old supermarket security uniform. Red tie, name tag on his chest. Calvin. A cold chill ran down my spine. That was the security guard who had handed over the shift to me earlier that night. I spun around toward the hallway leading to the front entrance. Empty. I pulled out my phone and called Calvin. No answer. The camera feed kept flickering. Then the woman slowly turned her head toward the figure behind her, toward Calvin. Her smile disappeared, and her expression changed into something else. Fear. A strange feeling came over me then. For the first time, I didn't think she was trying to scare me. It felt more like she was trying to warn me. Then the screen went black. Every light in the supermarket suddenly shut off. Absolute silence. No background music. No friserum. No electrical bus. Nothing. I turned on my phone flashlight. The beam shook in my hand. And then I heard footsteps. Not from aisle 9. From directly behind the camera room. Clop. 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 Security shoes. I slowly turned around. A figure was standing outside the glass door of the camera room. Security uniform. Red tie. Calvin. But something was wrong. He was standing too straight, not blinking, and his face looked stretched unnaturally wide from smiling too hard. The radio on my belt crackled. Calvin's voice came through the speaker. "Marcus," while the thing outside the door never opened its mouth. "Why did you let her back in?" I stepped backward. The Calvin outside the door started lightly tapping his head against the glass. Thunk, 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 still smiling. Blood slowly began running down his forehead. The distorted voice on the radio continued. She wasn't supposed to come back. The red emergency lights switched on. The entire store flooded with deep red light. And that's when I saw what was standing behind Calvin. The woman in the gray coat. Right behind him. So close she was almost pressed against his back. She slowly lifted her head and looked directly at me. Then she shook her head, like she was warning me not to open the door. At that exact moment, Calvin slammed himself against the glass. Bang! I screamed. The glass cracked. Bang! A second hit. I ran. I bolted out of the camera room. I sprinted through the dark supermarket, knocking over an entire snack display near the front. Fast footsteps exploded behind me. No longer slow, I ran straight into the parking lot. The outside lights flickered back on the moment I burst through the doors. I turned and looked back through the store windows. Nobody was chasing me. The supermarket was completely silent. The police arrived about 20 minutes later, and that's when I learned the worst part. Calvin had died earlier that afternoon. Car accident on his way to work. The police said they had been trying to contact the night shift employees to inform them, which meant the person who handed over the shift to me that night couldn't have been the real Calvin. I quit the next morning. About a month later, Jenna sent me an old newspaper article. The woman in the gray coat was named Laura Vance. She had been murdered in the supermarket parking lot almost 8 years earlier. The killer was never caught. The article included the last security camera image ever taken of Laura. And in the background, far behind her, stood a security guard wearing a uniform, red tie, and a name tag that read, Calvin. Story number 3. I got a call for myself during the night shift. My name is Daniel Harper. About 4 years ago, I worked the night shift as a dispatcher for a small taxi company in Nevada. I've never told this story anywhere except Reddit, because every time I do, people assume I was stressed out or sleep deprived. Maybe they're right, but I still remember that phone call perfectly. Every single word. The dispatch office was located behind an old auto repair garage off the highway. During the day, the place was busy nonstop. Phones ringing constantly, drivers coming and going, tourists calling for rides, taxi radios overlapping over each other. But the night shift was completely different. After 1 a.m., the place was almost dead. Just me. A few drivers finishing their last rides. The buzzing neon lights outside the parking lot. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Most nights, I sat alone in the tiny office taking calls and dispatching drivers over the radio. That night started completely normal. A drunk couple called for a cab around 12:20. A guy needed a ride to the airport at 1:05. By 2 a.m., everything had gone quiet. I was eating instant noodles when the office phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Silver Cab Dispatch. This is Daniel. No response. Just a faint layer of static. I figured it was a wrong number and was about to hang up when I heard breathing. Very close. Then a voice spoke. My voice. Don't hang up. I froze. I know this sounds impossible, but I swear it was my voice. Same tone. Same way of emphasizing words. Even the slight heavy breath at the end of sentences sounded exactly like me. At first I thought somebody was messing with me using AI voice software. I asked, "Who is this?" The voice paused for a few seconds, then replied, "Listen to me. Don't let driver 14 take the pickup at 2:33. Every hair on my body stood up. Driver 14 was Paul, late 50s, oldest night driver in the company. I asked, "Who are you?" The voice answered immediately, "I'm you." I hung up. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I sat there staring at the phone for a few seconds before laughing nervously to myself. I tried to rationalize it. Just a prank call. Someone recorded my voice. Probably one of the drivers messing around. But the feeling stayed with me. About 10 minutes later, the taxi radio crackled. "Dispatch, this is car 14. Paul's voice. I'm near Maple Road right now. Got any pickups?" I checked the clock. 2:31 a.m. And I remember the voice on the phone. "Don't let driver 14 take the pickup at 2:33. Right then, the dispatch system flashed with a new request. Pickup request, Maple Road. 2:33 a.m. I stared at the screen. The pickup address was at the very end of Maple Road, a deserted stretch near the woods north of town. Paul spoke over the radio again. "Dispatch, you want to take this one?" I don't know why, but I answered, "No, I'll send another car." Paul laughed. "Another car is at least 20 minutes farther away than me." "I know, just let another car handle it." I could hear the irritation in his voice, but eventually he replied, "All right." I assigned a ride to car 9 instead, a younger driver named Eric. Eric confirmed the pickup at 2:34. Then he disappeared from the radio. I waited about 10 minutes. No signal. I radioed back. Car 9, come back. Silence. I tried again. Still nothing. Then the radio exploded into loud static. After that, I heard Eric's voice. But he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to someone inside the cab. Sorry, what did you say? A few seconds of silence. Then Eric gave a nervous laugh. I don't understand what you mean. The static got worse. A cold feeling crawled on my spine. Eric, no answer. Then I heard Eric speak again, very quietly, like he was scared. When did you get in the car? The radio cut out completely. Total dead signal. I kept calling him over and over. Nothing. About 15 minutes later, the office phone rang again. Same unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but eventually I picked it up. My voice was on the other end again. This time it sounded more urgent. I told you not to let anyone take that pickup. I almost dropped the phone. Who the hell are you? The voice ignored the question. It just spoke faster. Listen carefully, Daniel. When the radio comes back on, don't answer it. I started getting angry out of pure panic. What kind of sick joke is this? A few seconds of silence. Then the voice spoke again, quieter this time. Because if you answer, it'll know you can hear it. I hung up again. My hands were actually shaking now. I looked around the office, trying to calm myself down. Everything still looked normal. The coffee machine, the neon lights, the sound of the old fan, the taxi radio. Way too ordinary for something like this to be happening. But right then, the radio crackled. Dispatch. Eric's voice. Very quiet. Distorted. I remembered the warning. Don't answer. So I stayed silent. The radio continued. Dispatch. She's still in the car. I swallowed hard. Eric sounded like he was trying not to cry. Then he whispered, I don't think she's human. Every hair on my body stood up. The radio hissed with static. Then I heard a car door open. Wind. And then Eric screamed. A very short scream. Like it got cut off halfway through. The radio went dead. I jumped out of my chair. I was about to call the police when the office door opened. Paul walked in. He took one look at my face and asked, What happened? I gave him the short version. Paul didn't laugh. He just asked, The Maple Road pickup. I nodded. His expression changed instantly. He slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. 3 years ago, another driver disappeared out there. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Why the hell didn't anyone tell me? Paul stared at the floor for a few seconds. Because nobody likes talking about it. He told me the driver's name was Nathan. One night, Nathan accepted a final pickup on Maple Road just before 3 a.m. Then he vanished. They found the cab abandoned in the middle of the road near the woods. Driver's door open, headlights still on, but no Nathan. The strangest part was the dashcam footage recovered from the car before the signal cut out. In the video, Nathan was driving alone, but he kept glancing up at the rearview mirror, like someone was sitting behind him. Then Nathan said, When did you get in the car? I felt the blood drain out of my body. That was the exact same thing Eric had just said over the radio. The office phone rang again. Paul and I both looked at it. Unknown number. 2:57 a.m. I didn't want to answer, but Paul nodded slowly. Pick it up. I lifted the receiver. This time, the version of my voice on the other end sounded different. More exhausted. Hoarser, like someone who hadn't slept in days. It's trying to find its way to you. I asked, What is it? A few seconds of silence. Then the voice answered, the woman in the back seat. At that exact moment, the taxi radio switched on by itself. Nobody had called in. Just breathing. A woman's slow breathing. Then a woman's voice whispered through the speaker. Very softly, Daniel. Paul shot to his feet. His face had gone completely pale. He whispered, Don't let her know you can see her. The lights inside the office flickered once. The radio kept playing the sound of breathing. Then the woman's voice whispered again, much closer this time. I'm outside the door. Both of us turned toward the office's glass entrance. The garage outside was completely dark, but there was a taxi parked right in front of the office. Cab number 9. The back door was hanging open, and someone was sitting inside. I didn't know where Eric was. That was the first thing that hit me when I saw the cab. The headlights were still on. The engine was still running, but the driver's seat was empty. Paul muttered a curse under his breath. Then he grabbed my shoulder and pulled me down beneath the office window. Turn the lights off. I immediately reached for the switch. The office dropped into darkness. The only light left came from the faint yellow glow of the parking lot outside. The taxi radio crackled softly. Then the woman's voice came back. Daniel. This time it wasn't coming from the radio. It came from outside the office. Very close. Paul tightened his grip on my shoulder. I could feel his hand shaking. The taxi outside still had the back door hanging open, and the thing sitting inside hadn't moved at all, but I could finally make it out more clearly. A woman. Long black hair covering her face. Head tilted slightly to one side. Both hands resting on her lap, like she was waiting for someone to get in. The taxi radio clicked. Then Eric's voice came through, distorted badly. Don't let her in. I lunged for the radio. Eric, the instant I answered, Paul whipped his head toward me. Real panic exploded across his face. What did you just do? Before I could answer, every radio in the garage switched on at the same time. All of them started broadcasting the same sound. A woman laughing. Quiet. Broken. Like someone trying to hold back laughter. Then the taxi door outside slowly shut. Click. The woman was no longer inside the cab. I looked across the parking lot. Nobody. But the radios kept hissing with static. And a version of my voice on the phone came back again. This time it was almost screaming. Don't look behind you. I froze. My entire body went cold. Because I could suddenly feel it. Someone was standing directly behind me. Very close. I heard breathing against the back of my neck. Cold. Damp. Like someone who had been standing outside for hours. Paul slowly backed away from me. His eyes were locked on something behind me with absolute horror. I wanted to turn around, but my body wouldn't move. Then a woman whispered directly beside my ear. Finally found you. The garage lights cut out completely. At the same moment, every radio erupted into deafening static. I heard Paul scream, then the sound of glass shattering. I threw myself forward instinctively and slammed shoulder first onto the office floor. The phone flew out of my hand. In the darkness, I saw the silhouette of a woman standing in the middle of the garage. Abnormally tall, head tilted crookedly, hair covering her face. She stood completely still for a few seconds. Then she started walking toward me. Not fast, not slow, but with every step she took, the red emergency lights in the garage flashed once. Red. Closer. Red. Closer again. I found a flashlight under the desk and switched it on. The moment the beam hit her, she vanished. Completely. The garage was empty again. The radios fell silent. A few seconds later, the lights flickered back on. Paul was lying beside the shattered office window, gasping for air. And then I saw the thing that made me quit the next morning. Someone had written a message across the dust covering the hood of Cab 9, written with a finger. The back seat is still empty. Eric was never found. Police discovered his cab later that morning at the end of Maple Road. Driver's door open. Interior lights still on. No blood. No signs of a struggle. No body. But the dash cam recovered a few final seconds before the signal cut out. The footage showed Eric alone in the driver's seat. He kept staring into the rearview mirror, face pale white. Then he said one final sentence. When did you get in the car? After that, the screen went black. But according to the police, the audio kept recording for another 7 seconds. A woman's voice, very close to the microphone, laughing softly, then whispering, "The back seat is still empty."